me. I was like,
That's a
what?
good thing. That's a good thing. Fine. Oh my goodness. Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. You know what? What is going on? That's what I want to know. Don't you want to know that? I know I do. What about Doge, this Department of Government Efficiency? What about all of these people who are being forced to take these buyouts, who might be laid off? The buyouts, well, they're generous, 8 months, right? Severance. But what does that do to someone's pension? I mean, it seems like whole classes of workers are being wiped out. We've seen this once. Those of you who are old enough to remember when the air traffic controllers were wiped out, it was shocking. It's like, wait. No all the air traffic controllers in America, they're down. Wait a minute. Yeah, well, we saw that, but now this is happening across the board in the United States. So, what is going on here, really? What about debt? Which is why I called this brilliant economist. I had to call Dr. Algernon Alston. Yes, he was just on here last week. I said, you got to come back. He said, what, Santita? Why? Well, I said, you're from the Center for Economic and Policy Research. You do race and economic justice. Because we do see race here. We do see gender issues. We do see those who are differently abled. We see everything's on the table, and everybody is going to be impacted by these buyouts, by these cuts. Moreover, we're all being impacted every day by a more than $36 trillion debt. Now, all of us who have credit cards know that the interest payment on the principal, you got to knock that down, because you will never get your debt. You will always be indebted if you don't knock that down. But what does that mean? What's the difference between personal debt and institutional debt, or a government's debt? Because we keep hearing that over and over and over and over and over again. And if you're not alarmed by a $36 trillion debt, you ought to be. We ought to be alarmed by that. But we ought to be alarmed by where our priorities are placed. Because somehow or another, we continue to find monies for war. We continue to find monies for computers, for technology, but we can't find the monies for people. There are people all across the country who need food. We saw during COVID, we saw family farmers who were growing the food, but they couldn't get the food to us. When we push migrants out and immigrants out who have particular visas to stay here, many of them do, well, if they're not, there are farm workers. So what happens if they're gone? And what's really going on here? Because Dr. Austin, it turns out that, I guess the quiet part is being said out loud. Now there are news stories that say that, well, the raids are not what we think that they are. In fact, the raids have really calmed down. Made a they made a big story out of them the first few days, but they're not really doing the raids now. They're not really pushing anybody out. So what's really going on? What does Elon Musk want? You know, in this new age, 150 years ago, oil and gas were king, right? And coal. Now information is the new gold. It's the new oil. It's the new gas. And all of these tech bros, they want your information. And now Elon Musk and his group that he's brought in, who've not been vetted, some of whom are like 19 years of age, one of whom just was forced to resign because of racist posts that he made in social media. We don't even know who these people are, but they have access to all of our stuff, our income information, our banking information. What is happening? But let me just peel this back and let's go to the debt, because everyone seems to be buzzing around this, the monies that we owe and the financial health that we do not have as a nation. Yes, we're the richest nation on earth at this time, but as much as we punch out to China, they are our biggest creditor. So, what are we doing really? So, I want you to follow me on Blue Sky at santitajackson.bsky.social, at santitajackson.bsky.social, and I'm on X at SantitaJ, at SantitaJ, and the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. But I want you to go on and meet me, everybody. Come on over here. I see you all over there. Come on and meet me on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. We welcome back to the show, of course, now your family, Dr. Austin. Let's start with this $36 trillion debt. I go to the U.S. debt clock occasionally, and and of course, having been a New Yorker off and on for wow, many decades now. You know, in Times Square, you have that debt clock, and it doesn't really mean a lot to you, but it really ought to, or should it, Dr. Austin?
Yeah, so you're a very brave person to regularly look at the U.S. debt.
Why am I brave? Oh no! Are you serious? Oh my gosh, are you serious? What does that mean?
Well, let me that's of course a joke. Because you have to realize, I mean, we're a very large country, over 300 million people, one of the wealthiest, countries in the world, one of the largest, debates whether the US or China is the largest economy. So, you know, the kind of the dollars and the numbers that we're used to, you know, you know, hundreds and thousands doesn't apply because you're talking about a very large economy, hundreds of millions of people, etc. So let me say that in the past, the debt level has been the issue with the debt has been exaggerated a bit because again, not only is it a large, very large economy, very rich country, but it constantly growing, right? So because our economy has been constantly growing, each year we can actually manage more debt, assuming, there are two assumptions. One, it's at a reasonable level, or let me say three assumptions. It's at a reasonable level, the economy keeps growing, and the interest rates are manageable. If any of those three get out of whack, then we start having problems. And yes, right now, a conservative think tank has scored the latest Trump proposals as adding 11 trillion, 11 trillion dollars to, at the high estimate, 11 trillion to that debt level. So that's really bad, right? Because right now it's very high, as you just said. So that's one area of concern. It's very high, and they're adding to it. Two, interest rates are higher. Remember, for a number of years, the Federal Reserve kept interest rates to near zero. Not anymore. The Fed hiked interest rates to kind of bring down inflation. So we've got a high level of debt, relatively high interest rates, and the economy. Remember, we said the economy has to keep growing. If it keeps growing, then we can manage more debt because we're richer, if you get richer. But a lot of the insanity that Trump is doing, I mean, really has me worried because I think, people need to start talking about recession. As you were just saying, you know, deporting all the people or a large segment of the people who pick who pick and process our food means our food prices are going up. A trade war with Canada and Mexico could mean the gas prices go up and everything that depends on the gas. Um, these other ventures, maybe getting into a war, and this disruption, people don't recognize, but the government and government spending is actually an important part of the economy. So shutting down USAID actually hurts farmers because farmers, USAID buys billions of dollars of food from American farmers, US, and ships it to people experiencing hunger overseas. But those billions of dollars just got stopped. So those farmers now have to lay people off, have to go out of business, have to, so the actions that the administration is taking, I don't think they clearly don't fully understand what they're doing, but they inherited a very strong economy, and they're just like hacking away at it, just throwing things
But why?
at
I
it
mean,
that are potentially harmful
but
to
why?
economic growth.
But let me ask you this. I mean, because these are supposed to be the smartest guys in the room, although I don't necessarily agree with
Not even close.
it.
Not even
No, 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 no.
close.
Because number one, you're not there, and and I know who's not there, right? Um, but I mean, because I heard someone on television this morning saying, well, Elon Musk knows something. He's the richest guy in the world. I said he's got $20 billion at the very least in contracts from the federal government. That's not including Starlink. What are you talking about?
Yeah, and
These
the thing,
guys are heavily subsidized by us. They're not necessarily the smartest people in the room. So why are they walking in, hacking away at everything? That's
yeah,
not.
and the thing that people need to recognize is like you could be brilliant at, coding and technology. That doesn't mean that you're a macroeconomist,
Mm,
right? You
that
can
part.
be the greatest chess player in the world. That doesn't make you a doctor, a medical doctor. So you have people just assume that, okay, if someone excels in this area, then they excel in every area. But that is just patently false. Um, so it's clear, I have to, Nicholas Kristof had this great
Mhm.
quote where he described the administration as practicing cruelty, ignorance, and short-sightedness. And I think that's really captures what's going on right now. Because yes, what they're doing in terms of the economy, and people said that before, it's clear that the Trump administration doesn't understand how tariff works. Um, so yes, they may be brilliant. Trump, I will say he's great at marketing, and Elon Musk might be great at technology. But again, neither of that makes you a macroeconomist. And let me say up front, I'm not a macroeconomist, but I work with macroeconomists and I read macroeconomists, and they're all saying this stuff is not good for the U.S. economy.
And of course, USAID, it turns out they're not being dissolved as much as they're being absorbed into the State Department. So it seems like they're making political decisions also. But we have people who we don't know who have access to all of our information. And that to me, should that be concerning to us?
That should be incredibly concerning. I mean, you mentioned that data is or information is we should know by now that data information is money and power, right? That's why
Today.
all these apps, Google gives you quote unquote free search. And how did they become one of the wealthiest corporations by giving you free search? Is because they have access to your data.
And your email. Your mail is
Yeah,
free. Everybody,
yeah,
there are no free lunches, right?
exactly. So what the technology sector is about these days is information. It's data. It's collecting data, processing data, selling data. And what we have just done is probably the greatest like
Data
data
mining
heist,
in
data
everyone.
heist
Yes.
that we have ever seen. We have
Okay.
given Elon Musk, who, I joke, it's like, should we call him Supreme Leader Musk or President Musk? Because he's acting like he's in charge. Now, remember, he I lost count of how many private companies he's the head of, but
Mhm.
he's head of Tesla, SpaceX. You mentioned
Starlink,
Starlink, and he probably has some other ventures. So
PayPal, he's
he
heavily invested in them.
he is he owns several private companies that are just as his. Now, as you mentioned, he directly received a lot of money in getting these companies established. And without these loans and without these contracts from the U.S. government, he would essentially have no money,
Wait a minute,
right?
stop. I want to restate that the US government is us.
Yes,
Without our money.
yes.
I want to establish that for everyone who's watching. Without our money, he would probably be part of the South African diaspora, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
we gave him
Yeah.
low interest loans. We gave subsidies to EVs that made his product more marketable. We give him contracts. The SpaceX is money from that's money from the U.S. All of his companies, so many of his companies are benefiting directly or historically from the US government, from us. And now we have given someone who is dependent on the US government for wealth access to the US government, to everything inside the US. So this is the classic example of the fox being in charge of the hen house, right? It's like he depends on the money from the government, and now we put him in charge. Literally, he took over treasury of the money from the government.
Which is your tax returns, your
Yes,
number
yes.
one, what your taxes. He knows
He
everything.
knows your bank accounts. If you do direct deposit, he has your bank account information. He has your address.
And
And
there are
we
reports
don't
that say
know we don't know what on earth he's doing. We don't know how he's collecting. He has brought in people
Mhm.
from his private company into the government and to access our data. Remember, data is money and power. And he's given that access to people who work for him in his private company. Now, the other things that I've seen the security people say is one, that if you're Russia, if you're China, if you're North Korea, if you're Iran, you are attacking the US right now in terms of cyber because Elon Musk and his folks have broken down US security systems, with all the disruption that they're doing. And it appears that they're not handling the data securely. So it's a perfect opportunity for foreign countries who want access to this information. Now is the time to attack because the defenses have been shut down. So it is insane that Congress is just sitting by and letting this guy, you know, do whatever he wants with all of the information of not just the people who work in the federal government,
Mhm.
but everyone in the United States who has any connection with the US government, with the federal government, which is everyone who pays taxes. Um,
But I think it's the Republicans in Congress and this is where your vote matters, everybody. And we're upon the 2026 election cycle. We have an opportunity to recapture the U.S. House of Representatives. They have the power of the purse, do they not, Dr. Austin?
they used to,
Well,
until Elon Musk just took that over, and the Republicans are sitting there and just letting him. It's absurd. They have abdicated their responsibility. We elected them and we said, you have the power of the purse. And then Elon Musk is saying, well, I'm going to spend this money. I'm going to not spend this money. I'm taking over treasury, and they are saying nothing. They have abdicated their responsibility. It is shameful. Um,
I, I'm almost speechless. Well, you know what? I am speechless because you know, several people I know have actually called their representatives, their federal representatives, and they've asked, okay, how can I be sure that my information is safe? And Attorney Terry O'Neill, the president emeritus of the National Organization of Women, said she was told, she lives in Tennessee now, in Nashville, and she was told, well, Mr. Trump said that everything is just fine. That was what, and oh, I mean, heaven help me if I'm not telling what I'm not, if I'm not accurately conveying to you what she said to me. And I said, oh my gosh. But but no, to be fair, we do it on the Democratic side too, because I don't think we question critically anymore, and it has gotten the whole nation into a world of trouble. We need to be asking critical questions about everything, and now more than ever, because now someone has access. I mean, there's no privacy. You already know that. I don't
yeah,
even bank online.
we like you said, the people who now have access to all of the data in the federal government have not been vetted. Um,
A
you
19-year
know,
old, and we
the
find
Trump
out this
administration,
25-year-old who is a flagrant racist.
yeah,
And
and the Trump
wait a minute,
administration.
stop. The Wall
Go
Street
ahead.
Journal found him out.
Yeah,
They are no leftist
yeah,
media
not at all.
outlet. They called the White House. They said, "Hey, do you know what this guy has in his social media file profile?" They said, "Oh, no." Oh my
Yeah,
God.
there's no vetting, and the people who have quote unquote been vetted, the Trump administration, I think they passed an executive order that said, basically do the absolute minimum to get Elon Musk and some of these other people on board. People who, if you gave them real scrutiny, I think they probably wouldn't get, and you had the real FBI as opposed to the Trump FBI, these people wouldn't get security clearances.
Well, you're good because I don't trust real one or the new one. I don't trust him. But I think that's a hazard of growing up as a child of the civil rights
Yes,
movement. I'm
yes,
like,
yes, yes, I understand.
I'm not feeling any of y'all, but I wish you well. But even though I do know that there's some good people in it, and
Yeah.
particularly behind COINTELPRO, let me just say this: you had some
Hmm.
people who joined in the hope that they would be able to root out the corruption, and the bad guys. Now, I mean, because as people join the police force, people join all of these entities in the hope that they will be able to make positive change, and I appreciate that. That having been said, I'm still, um, I still, I just know that they still do not track right wing terrorists. They track peace activists. They track Black Lives Matter. They track all the folks who aren't going to bomb the building. And the folks who they say are going to bomb the building, they have talked them into the plot. Ugh. That having been said, I'm just trying to find out, what do you think that we should be look on the lookout for at this time, Dr. Austin? I mean because every day,
Well,
I,
y-
it's something new, and you don't know what to do with all this information, Dr. Austin.
yes, it is. Yes, it is overwhelming. It is hard to keep up, and yes, that's the plan. The plan. I mean, they said explicitly. I think it was Bannon. Um, it's like if you do 20 illegal things today, they might stop you from doing 10 of them, but you still got 10 illegal things done. That's the playbook. It's like do as much stuff, and if you do enough stuff, a lot of it will get through because people will just be overwhelmed. They can't keep up, and that is the plan. Um, so yeah, so it's difficult, especially when you have our Congress just, particularly the Republicans in Congress, let me specify, just sitting by and letting Musk and the rest of the administration do whatever they want, even though you go to legal scholars, and I can't say the Trump legal team because they're part of the corruption.
Yeah.
All the legal scholars would say that sure seems illegal to me. And the Congress just sits by and lets it happen. Um, so yeah, so we're in a difficult situation. I think, like you said, we have to make our voices heard. Um, and I do think public opinion matters and public engagement matters. So yes, we need to keep an eye out for our data, and um, because I we nobody knows what Musk and his
Hmm.
private companies are going to do with our data, and we don't know what, because of their lack of security policies, we don't know that hostile foreign governments, won't have our data. So we're in a very insecure position with relating to that. Um, but again, I think we also, I think the public should also speak out about this conflict of interest that, someone who is intensely dependent on money from the federal government being put essentially in charge of the federal government. That is so clearly a conflict of interest. We didn't elect President Musk.
No, we
Um,
didn't. And
we
he's not
didn't.
eligible. He can't run. He's not a native born citizen.
I
But
know, but he was given authority after some playing around. I mean, he was originally supposed to be just an advisor, right? It was supposed to be, he was not supposed to be in the government. He was just supposed to be an advisor. Then they moved him into the government.
no, no,
They
no.
gave,
In between that, Trump
yeah.
said he's the guest who won't leave. Remember that?
I don't, I didn't,
he's
I missed
he's
that one.
he
Yeah,
said
okay.
he's come to Mar-a-Lago and he just won't leave.
Well, now he's come to the U.S. government and is not apparently not going to leave. But yes, the Department of Government Efficiency. But now he's, shutting down USAID, which again is helping address hunger in the world. Nicholas Kristof again points out uh, there's a bird flu epidemic that's happening. There's an Ebola outbreak. There's another hemorrhagic uh, outbreak. And USAID used to help keep track of these disease outbreaks in the world. And now we've lost that capacity. So there could be another pandemic starting up, but we're going to be once again slow to respond because we've just put the people on the front. We've just fired all the people on the front line keeping track of these emerging disease outbreaks.
We just
It's
fired
like,
everybody.
but yeah,
Except for a
so
few
so
hundred people.
so Doge was supposed to just be looking at government efficiency, but it's shut down, taken over and shut down USAID. They've taken over Treasury. They've taken over the Office of Personnel Management. I've heard that they're going after the Department of Education, the Department of Labor. They've gotten access to the Medicaid and Medicare system. Um, you know, this is this person has as much, if not more, power than President Trump. Who else has the power in the U.S. government to overnight shut down so many different agencies and fire so many different people?
It's,
This is not this is a president or a supreme leader or something, and the U.S. the American people didn't sign up for this.
And with all these conflicts of interest, as you
Yeah.
let me read part of this story to you. And of course, before we go, I want to ask you about the football because I know about your writings about these, college football coaches. Of course, they call me now.
Oh.
I follow you, and I said, wait, I know the stories here. No way did I, because I have lots, like literally a cabinet full of papers, and you have your own files. Da, da, da. But this is it. The president of South Africa has said that he will not be bullied by President Trump. I'll read to you from this. Al Jazeera has reported this. This is Reuters. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said on Thursday that his country will not be bullied days after U.S. President Donald Trump said he would cut off funding to South Africa over a land reform act, which, of course, I'll say this parenthetically, this is something that has angered Elon Musk. Because, of course, the land
Of
reform act
course.
is to now, because this is what Robert Mugabe negotiated first, which is why he's revered and may he rest in peace. He's revered throughout Black Africa and throughout Africa, but he was hated by the Europeans. He said, I don't just want the vote. I want my land back. And then we can negotiate whether you stay or how you stay, but we want our land back. Nelson Mandela said, give me my vote and we will work on the rest going forward. Well, better late than never. The South African government has said, we want our land back. Because now essentially Black South Africans, not mixed race South Africans, although they don't have much, much more, and Indian South Africans, they don't have much more. The conditions have not changed.
Mhm.
And so now he is saying, and it's becoming a big thing. Trump said, without citing evidence, of course, according to this report, that South Africa is confiscating land and treating certain classes of people very badly, i.e., white people, and on and on and on and on. And so South Africa said, we will withhold our minerals from you. Now, if you want to, you're going to treat us like we're grown people, and we need their minerals badly. I mean, they really make the country and the world run. Your cell phones, everything you
Yeah.
do.
Mhm.
How seriously should we take that? Is that something that we should be looking at?
Oh, this, I hadn't even heard about this because again, there's so much coming at me that
No,
it's hard
every
to keep
single
track.
day. I
But
mean,
it's not surprising given that yes, that Musk is a South African born, that he and views the U.S. government as his personal plaything. you know,
yeah.
uh, that this would come up. Um, yeah, so the Trump administration, I mean, we saw in their dealings with Canada and Mexico that they, once again, they're very erratic, and that's the challenge of dealing with this administration because Trump says all sorts of things,
Mm.
and half of the things he said, he has no intention of doing or does not end up doing, and half of the things, or maybe even less than half, he does. So when he speaks, you have no idea, is this serious? Is this just, is should I just ignore this? Um, so I don't know. I don't know. I mean, going back to Canada and Mexico, it's still not clear where things are because he said, "Oh, I'm just going to delay the tariffs for a month," and it's like, what is that? Why? like, you know. Um, so it's just not clear. I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know how much Elon Musk, President Musk, is going to pressure him to do it because if he's really concerned, I mean, if it is important to Musk, it'll happen
Yeah,
because
and that's why I brought
he's
it up
he's
because
the president. Yeah.
yeah, because there are so many conflicts of interest, and corporate media are not calling them out. They
Mhm.
don't. They don't. They've not amplified the fact that he's a product of apartheid South Africa. they don't talk about Peter Thiel, who grew up in Namibia. It wasn't Namibia at the time, it was Southwest Africa, but it was effectively South Africa. The frontline states were. Um, I mean, the former security advisor for President Trump went to college in South Africa. Wait a minute, stop, wait for it, in the 80s. What American went to university in South Africa in the 80s? Come on. But the conflicts of interest, the 20 billion plus, I mean, and that's not including Starlink, space exploration. Um, these conflicts of interest, no one is amplifying. And to
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
Dr. Austin, is very dangerous. Before I pivot to football, because it is Super Bowl weekend. Yeah, yeah. But I mean, but I don't you find that interesting?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think again, there's so much going on that it's it's hard to keep up. But yes, but this is a pretty obvious conflict of interest because he's clearly still doing business with the government
Mm-hmm.
while has taken over the government, including the treasury, the people who write the checks. It's like, who would do this? It's like,
Who would
you
be allowed?
you hire someone and say, here's my checkbook. Go crazy.
I mean, what does and because the guy who was going to oversee regulations and policy, they kicked out
Hmm.
Vivek Ramaswamy,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
And that's the other thing. That's the other thing that he's doing. The federal government has regulated his industries and agencies because, you know, um, I believe there's been labor violations and
Yeah.
safety violations. Now, you need to double check that, but I vaguely recall those issues arising. Um, and now they've given him the power to change the right and change the regulations. It's just
Oh
it's
my
like,
gosh! You know what? You gotta laugh to keep from crying because I just
yeah,
don't
yeah.
know.
Next thing you know, you'll hear OSHA saying Tesla is the best company in the world, and SpaceX is the best company in the world.
Oh my gosh!
Signed Elon Musk.
Signed you. And wait a minute, just like the president's health records. I'm the healthiest person who's ever served in this office. And then when you saw his doctor, you said, "Are you serious?" But I can't help but think that there's something going on that we don't really. I think it bears a lot of analysis, and I think we should remain vigilant
Hmm.
and continue to look because
Yeah.
it takes a very smart person to appear to not be so bright. It is when I see President Trump, I don't see someone who is not smart. To have number one, to have remained in the public consciousness, to remain
Hmm.
relevant for 4 or 5 decades.
Yes.
That very few people are able to do that. Very few people are able to just continue to remain relevant. I mean, you see that with a Diana Ross. The Supremes are part of our nostalgic history. She's part of the current culture. How has she done that, right? I mean, she's still current. I mean, and so I think we have to look at people who Michael Jackson never, he was a superstar from the age of 8 or 9 until he
I think
died.
I think younger than that. I think it was like 5 years
Oh
old when he
well, I mean,
started.
I know when he was appearing at the Regal here in Chicago,
Mhm.
and I mean he was a superstar when he came out of his mother. I mean that's it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I mean, and so when I mean, Mick Jagger has been on the front row. A friend of mine put it this way, for 50 years. I mean, there's some
Mhm.
people
Mhm.
who
Yeah.
remain uppermost in our consciousness. So I give him a lot of credit for that.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I don't see. I'm just trying to find out, like, what is really going on here, not just with him, but with the country, because you don't generally see people who are this publicly wealthy come out front. I
Mhm.
mean, they
Yeah.
were all on the front row at the inauguration, which is highly unusual. You see the Supreme Court justices, You see the people, the high selected officials. You don't generally see the captains of industry on the front
Hmm.
row. That made me go, wait a minute, what's really going on here? But let me bring this up for you. Hold on, because you know you're going to be back. What is Cynthia McClendon? I just want to get some of these comments in. Said Musk is doing exactly what Trump tells him to do. Folks really act like Trump wasn't trying to get rid of our democracy during his first term. The whole country was told Trump and his cronies would dismantle the U.S. government as we know it. The agenda has been planned for many years, and people are still asleep. All right, Cynthia. And Stephen Anthony, you say Trump is a bully, and it works for him a lot. But the world's is a bigger place than he thinks. America's been a bully, though, Stephen. And that's what imperialism brings, hubris with it. When you just really think that it's a unipolar world and you can do whatever it is that you want. And the thing is, Miss Cynthia, I hear you. I think Musk is doing what Trump tells him to do, but on one level, I think they're on a collision course, Dr. Austin, because you got two of the biggest egos. I
Yeah,
mean, and,
yeah.
and
I
mind
mean,
you, anyone who's in that space, and I would say a Republican or a Democrat, it doesn't matter. You have to have a huge ego to really believe that you have what it takes to make decisions that impact the world. Okay.
mhm.
So let's kind of take that off the table, you know, just unless it becomes megalomania. But that's another story, right? So, Dr. Austin, I mean, who's what is the agenda as you I mean as so much is being thrown at us all day every day? Do you can you make anything of it just yet?
Well, there is, I think the term oligarchy, and particular, of course, in this context, a sort of white nationalist, not even nationalist, a white oligarchy, seems to be what we have and what is being strengthened, right? The anti-DEI stuff, and what that um, person who was just made made Undersecretary of Secretaries of State said, you know, white men should rule everything, you know.
Yeah.
So there's that sort of
Wow.
racist angle. But again, there's a tremendous amount of money that these people who already have more money than they can spend in their lifetime
Hmm.
are going to make. I think I saw that Musk's net worth just increased something like $64 billion since the
Hmm.
election or something like that. Um, and with the deregulation of his industries that he will put in place because he's now in charge of regulation, and potentially whatever other perks he wants to put in place because, and again, remember, all of his businesses have relied or have gotten their start from the federal government, and he
Hmm.
now is the federal government. So that puts him in place to make his businesses and his wealth, just go through the roof. So,
We're watching that
and
happen.
of course we know that Trump has been very much, throughout his presidency, throughout his campaign, has been selling stuff and trying to make money. He went into crypto. He was selling sneakers. He was selling NFTs.
No,
Uh,
no.
now he
Gold.
wants.
Gold sneakers now.
Now there's talk about a Riviera, where Gaza is. Again, make money. That's what they do. And I think they're now using the federal government to help them make
Mhm.
more money.
But I think that all of this, sadly, has been a pretext because even uh, about 2.5 weeks before, excuse me, October 7th, Prime Minister Netanyahu came before the United States, excuse me, the UN General Assembly, as world leaders do, the third week of September, and he presented a map of the new Middle East, and Palestine was not on it. there was no West Bank, there was no East Jerusalem, there was no Gaza. And they just told the people of Lebanon, who they have invaded, that they cannot go back. In northern Lebanon, I believe it is, that they cannot go home. So there is a lot that's going on. And there was a major oil and gas discovery off the coast of Gaza. And we have seen a lot of violence directed toward the Palestinians since then, because they were sitting on, basically, on some of the wealthiest land, excuse me, in that part of the world, in a very resource rich part of the world. So you got the map of the new Middle East, then you have the attacks, and um and I watch HGTV, and I don't like watching demolition as much. I like, let me wait till, what is it, 55 minutes after the hour, so I can see the after. That's what I love to see. I do.
Mhm.
But what's happening is now we're seeing the demolition has happened,
Yeah, it has.
and tragically. And so there's that. But let me bring this to your attention, because of course we're coming up on the Super Bowl, everybody. And I know everyone is going to be watching. I'm going to watch some of it, but I mean, because it's exciting. It's exciting. It's certainly, I will be eating food and having a good time and talking with some friends. But you wrote in December this report, the white racial preference in the employment of college football head coaches, which is, there are so many tremendous implications for that. Because that's why having Deion Sanders was such a paradigm changing moment, because now you had um, a former, I mean, a Hall of Famer who had come back to a black school, and it was a complete game changer, who became their father. I mean, just like Coach Eddie Robinson, of course, the winningest coach. He even won more games, yes, than Bear Bryant. The winningest coach in college football is Coach Eddie Robinson, who, of course, he coached so many great football players. But of course, uh, he coached the quarterback for the Washington team uh, that won in 1988 the Super Bowl. I can't believe I'm forgetting Doug's last name, but that was so incredible, because everyone thought that John Elway was going to win, and this guy threw four touchdowns in one quarter. I will never forget that as long as I live. And he had already been one of the most prolific and one of the best football, college football quarterbacks in history already. So, but why did you think it was a great moment to write this? You said typically about half of Division I college football players are black, but less than a fifth of the head coaches are black. Um, why is that important? I can just stop there.
Yeah, so I'm
Not Doug Evans. Oh, I'm going to get it. Okay.
I'm coming at this as someone who does race and economic justice and economic policy. And my point in highlighting this, and I said that this is part of a series on white
Hmm.
racial preferences in the labor market, because the anti-DEI folks will tell you that, you know, that there is no discrimination against black people, and the only people who experience discrimination are, white people and other dominant groups, and that racial preferences are for, people of color, not for white people. But I have been really trying to get people to recognize that the racial preferences in the labor market are for white people.
Mm.
That if you have equally qualified, an equally, and there are many studies, you have an equally qualified white person and black person, that employers are more likely to hire the white person, although the qualifications are the same. And so I'm doing this series to try to hammer in this point, and using football coaching is important because people feel like, in other occupations, it's kind of people feel like it's hard to objectively assess like who's the better, candidate, and assess the quality. But with football, um, it's something that many people can relate to. So I'm using this as an example of what occurs in the labor market. And like
Mhm.
you say, we have a large number of um, we have tens of thousands of black players coming through college football, tens of thousands, and yet of those tens of thousands, the the quote unquote market is telling us that we just can't find anybody who can coach.
Coach you.
Yeah, we just can't find anybody. So we have this consistent, and this is from go this consistent from the beginning of college football to today, overrepresentation of white head coaches and a consistent underrepresentation of blacks in the head coach position. And it is pretty severe when you look at football. I mean, it's most severe, the black underrepresentation, relative to the amount of players, the proportion of players, is worse in football than in many other college sports. So I just wanted to highlight one that, in spite of thousands and thousands of football players, there really is no justification that you can't tell me that of those thousands, that you can't find that none of them had the ability or the talent to become a head coach. It's clearly a white racial preference in the occupation.
So well, we can't call that affirmative action. Um, but what can we call that?
It's a racial preference. I don't see, so affirmative action is not a system. People have called affirmative action racial preferences. It is not racial preferences. The racial preferences in the labor market are for white people.
Mhm.
Affirmative action is an attempt to achieve equal opportunity
Mhm.
in a context of white racial preferences. You know,
No, I think
so
that, and it
yeah.
was Doug Williams. Let me say it was Doug Williams. I had to look that up. I can't believe
Mhm.
his name escaped me because let me tell you, I was at Howard at the time and had a little apartment, and I don't know how we fit all these people into my place, but there were like like 20 or 30 folks. And they kept it all week long. It was John Elway, who was a great, legitimately great quarterback. I'm not taking anything from him because he was great. But Doug Williams, I had followed his career from college. Thank you, Ebony and Jet. So I knew that he too, under the leadership of Eddie Robinson, the legendary coach Eddie Robinson, he too was legitimately great.
Mhm.
And everyone would people talked about him. They talked about him the way they talked about Tiger Woods and the Williams sisters because he was that great a quarterback in college.
Yes.
So that having been said, when Super Bowl week came upon us, everybody said this man, the Washington team was going to be routed by John Elway and the Broncos. I'll never forget it as long as I live. They were going to do it. And he threw 4 touchdowns in the first quarter.
Wow.
And all the commentators would say, they were like Chrissy Everett. Yeah, and I used to love Chris Everett. And I still love her, but I don't like her commentary. I don't like the way she treats black tennis players. Yeah, I'm putting it out there because it's true, and other people commenting on it now. Thank you. She's being called out by people about it too. They would say, "Oh, John Elway's coming back." I'm like, wait, wait, wait. You just have a guy who broke a record. Who else has thrown 4 touchdown passes in the first quarter? I mean, ah, and they just said he's going to come back. John Elway's going to come back. He never did. And no one, I mean, just to get black people hired in the NFL. as coaches. And I mean, and these coaching jobs, by the way, in college pay millions upon millions of dollars. And it's not just the money, it's
Yes.
the psychological impact, right? Dr. Austin, on these young men they're coaching. And
Yeah, yeah. So one of the problems, and and I mentioned that we have to, the what affirmative action does is it sets in place, mentorship, recruiting, training, etc. If you're doing it properly. But what we have a situation now where there are many, likely many Black football players who have talent and who could become very excellent coaches,
mhm.
but they look at the field, of coaching, and they think, look, I'm Black, I'm not going to get a job.
Yeah,
So I'm going to do something else. So this is again why affirmative action is necessary, because the underrepresentation of Black people in the occupation discourages people from even trying to get in. So you need an affirmative of action program. You need someone to say, look, we are going to actually give you a fair shot at getting this occupation. You need that system for people to try. Right now, if people think, I'm not going to get a fair shot, why should I try? You're going to have that. You have this vicious cycle of the underrepresentation creates a condition that furthers the underrepresentation, because people are saying, why try? I'm not going to get it. So that's really important. Let me just say a couple more points, and unfortunately, I'm going to have to go.
mhm.
I focus on college head coaches, but the Washington Post did this great analysis of NFL head coaching and the
I read that.
underrepresentation
It was a
of.
tremendous
So
series.
yeah, so people should look at that, because that was an excellent series. And you were talking about a Black quarterback. Remember, it used to be that people said, "Oh, Black people can't be quarterbacks."
That's right.
You
That's
know?
right.
And so we're in a situation where people are saying, well, Black people just can't be coaches. They don't have the intellectual ability to be coaches. So that's what we're pushing against, because just like we finally got people to recognize that no, in fact, Black people can be quarterbacks. We still have work to be done to get people to recognize, oh, Black people can be head coaches. Uh, you know, so that's where we are in 2025.
In 2025. That's right. Go, Patrick Mahomes, go. Well,
Yeah, so like I said, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to go, but
well,
it's been
thank
wonderful
you.
talking with you
It's always a
again.
joy, Dr. Algernon Austin, the Center for Economic Policy and Research. Of course, you are the Director of Race and Economic Justice. And you
Yes,
know what?
yes.
I hear you, Steve. You say you're glad you're colorblind. You know what? I'm not colorblind. But what I am is not a racist. I don't mind anyone's colors. I think it's a great thing. Everybody, wherever you came from, you bring a rich tradition with you. And the great part is that we've all survived to be here. Whatever our ancestors have been through, we're here. All of us, all of us. So I don't want to be blind. And I don't want to be blinded. What I don't want to be, thank you so much, Dr. Austin. What I don't want to be is a racist. What I don't want to be is look down upon someone because of where they come from, wherever it is that they come from. That's what I don't want to do. And so I'm hearing you, but it's the racism that's the problem, not my race. My race is if that's an issue for someone. That's someone else's issue. Race is not the problem. Racism is. So we don't need to be blind to someone's color. We just don't need to be blinded by someone's color. Everybody's color is a wonderful thing. All people are beautiful. All people are beautiful. And all people matter. All people do matter. But because of racism, until Black lives matter, until the most marginalized people matter, no one's life will matter. And that's the truth. I'm Santita Jackson, everybody. God bless you. I'll see you in a few days. Oh, on Keep Up Alive, iHeartRadio, 7 to 9 Central Standard Time on iHeartRadio, the Santita Jackson Show, signing off here on AM 950 Radio. God bless you, everybody.